Now I want to talk about our 7 future generations. We hear this frequently. What about the children? What about the children? And then the political concepts are kicked down the can, kicked down the road for the next and the next and the next. We are the ones that are responsible for the next generation. We are the ones responsible for the generation after that. We are the ones that are responsible for the 7 future generations. There are times I talk about spiritual contracts, and spiritual contracts reach from one generation to the next generation to the next generation, and we are the ones that bear these contracts, that have the responsibility to deal with them. For those women that are having children, or for those married couples that are adopting, you are taking that responsibility of the future generation, as well as the generation beyond that. When it comes to women, it's about sharing your sisterhood. When it comes to men, it's about sharing brotherhood. And once we learn to share, we quicken the pace at sharing until finally we are moving at 80 miles an hour in a 50-mile-an-hour zone, and we are heading straight towards that force of domination control to simply say, it's time for you to go. With total layers of empowerment, we talk to the domination control and say, your time is done here. We draw upon our dream worlds and we create that future place so that domination control no longer has anchors. And once we look at those anchors and question those anchors, we have our moments of deep power, that inner power, where we take the joy of freedom and spread it to the all. And when we claim this power, we empower the all. We empower the all, we once again find inner peace. Once we find inner peace, we begin to co-create prayers with everyone. Whatever vehicle, whatever religion, whatever form of spirituality, this is it. Here you are. It is your prayers that help define the universe how to change. So if each one on an individual level tells the universe exactly what they want to do to change without concepts and patterns of domination control behind those words, we change the world. Because we give the universe patterns to function with. We give the universe wisdom of our living in this 3D life to work with. And as we go even further, we enter the drum of timing. The drum of timing is a unique concept. As in the very first ice worlds, the ice mountains came, the first dawn of Earth, man was young. Man ate plants. It did not eat meat at that time. And then great antelope came down out of the mountains, the ice mountains, and came to the first shamans of the land, the first two-leggeds, and said, the coming ice mountains will destroy the plants, and Earth will be going through a great change. Earth wants you to live, and is now my service to you, for you to live. So you will take my flesh, my hide, and you will consume meat and use all forms of my body. And the shamans of the land said, no, we cannot kill you. You are our brothers. You are our sisters on this land. It is not right. And Antelope said to them, it is my service to this world. Take my flesh. It is my service. Take my hide. It is service. Take my hoofs as glue. It is my service to you so you may survive the coming ice mountains. And man did what it was asked to. It took the service. And a man survived the first ice mountain and the second ice mountain. And the first shamans of the first land honored antelope by making antelope man clans, where they honored the wisdom of eating the flesh and made sure that nothing was wasted. And this is what the concept that we are returning to. Who's being of service to the world? Who is making the sacrifice to help change? Who is telling the people you can all be one with the world if you simply understand the illusion you're being forced to live in? The first illusion of the first man was to think they could survive without help. Even in the great caves of fire, they did not have the foresight to see there would be no wood to burn, and that their people would starve without the plants. But the animals stepped forward and offered their service. And now we are here to offer our service to all people, all tribes, all nations, all clans under the rainbow. So we can have a unified global culture, a unified global society, a unified concept of dream time that we can give roots to and be honored as we're part of it. As we go through the time of gathering of power, and I mean gathering of power, because it'll take the many of us and not the few of us to gather our power, our strength, our knowledge, our wisdom to truly combat. And I use that word lightly because not everybody will pick up a sword. Some will pick up a pen or a digital document. Others will use their voice. And there will still others that will only see through the violence. But that's fine. We are going through a change and not everyone will get it. But as long as we allow the truth to be our protection, that we are changing this world for the better, The inner omens will come to you about what your purpose here in this world is, what your reason here is, and how you interact with that truth will determine what layers and patterns you see. As the layer and patterns begin to expand and expand, truth will be your protection in the face of fake knowledge, fake wisdom. And then there'll be the diversions, the things on TV, the objects in the sky, and the fear that runs rampant. And as fear runs rampant, it'll be people like me or any of the other 54-plus hosts here on this radio station that will battle fear, will battle that concept. So ultimately, we can all take truth as our protection and transform ourselves like the butterfly, wrapping ourselves in a cocoon of wisdom and knowledge, love and empowerment, until finally we go through the dark times and come to the light times and simply look back on the past and say, by God, how did we do it? We did it by standing in our truth and owning our shadow and saying, no force of domination and control, you will not own my dream time. I own my dream time. It is my world. You have no presence here and are not wanted, and it's time for you to leave. And when those words resonate deep, we will transform through the cycle of movement. We will understand the shadow as part of us, as part of the whole, until finally, once again, we all return to our inner ceremony and cleanse ourselves of the old times. And as we cleanse ourselves of the old times, we'll once again return to a state of joy. And that state of joy is something everyone wants. Because within joy, it is easier to find true love. You find your soulmates, find your purpose of love that is in this world, how to exchange love on its many levels, how to understand love, and how to share love's wisdom. Love has many forms of teaching to it, many forms of wisdom to it. But at the current state, we are very young as a species in understanding love, though every generation before has tried to define it, has tried to tell us of its secret schools, but we still keep missing some of it. There is still propaganda. There's still domination and control. And that's one hard fact for people to understand. Love doesn't conquer all in this illusion that we live in. Until we change the illusion that the illusion itself is how love overrides the illusion. Love doesn't need to conquer. Love simply needs to exist. Love doesn't need to have tears or joy or happiness. It simply needs to be love without strings attached. And that's one of the greatest secrets of all mystery schools. Love does not need to conquer. Love just needs to be unity and wholeness achieved. Love just needs to be the grace of how we live life. Love just needs to be illumination and clarity in times of darkness. Love needs to be the wisdom of the Great Spirit high above, respecting the world down below. So the macro and the micro of all species and all beings here can come once again to understanding our nature is to nurture all spirit kind, to nurture all kinds.
By far, the largest accumulated load is the emotional mass loosely held as the human ego. Originally a primal output from the survival imprint, it generates large numbers of emotional patterns which need constant reinforcement to maintain their existence. The drive for reinforcement consumes a tremendous amount of psychic energy. The ego exploits the concept that it is needed in order for the individual to exist and achieve, that the emotion of confidence cannot exist without ego support, and that happiness is a satisfied ego. So the ego brings forth a torrent of emotionally irrational reasons to justify its existence, sidestepping the fact that emotion and irrationality are not synonymous. Because of consciousness, of which you're a part, it's not dependent on space-time for its existence. It's inevitable that many patterns are retained when entities are no longer in this dimension.
It's inevitable with a what? Your last sentence?
It is inevitable that many patterns are retained when entities are no longer in this dimension. Patterns from previous experience.
Okay.
But that's actually not previous, because actually when you get in
simultaneous
different wavelengths, time becomes spherical.
Right.
It's like assuming you were going through day-to-day an experience, a whole day, and you looked at every moment of that day as a frame in a motion picture film. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And suppose you were able to do that, and suppose you jumped out of that film and laid the whole film on the table, and you could look at the whole day from a higher dimensional perspective.
Because that is the point of view of that higher dimension, right? You can see it all.
And a lot of times people fragment things. When you actually perceive something, you're separate from it. The only way you can actually know something is to become it. In terms of cultural religion, people say they want to know God and everything. You have to become this, and in fact you are. In many aspects, you are part of the Creator. So in order to know that, you have to become it. So
right.
In a cultural level, if all the religions knew who they were, they'd be out of a job.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting.
The shadow is yourself, basically, and it's everything you don't want to see about yourself. And what I wanted to add was, once you go beyond that, and you go through lack, I'm not good enough, I don't love myself, I'm a victim, and all this sort of crap that prevents you from accepting responsibility for your life and your actions, and everything that's happened has been a result of you making decisions based on the information you had at the time. When you accept that, and then, it might be traumas that have happened to you and stuff like that, and that is the stuff that resides in the shadow because you don't want to face it. It's dark, and it's there for behind the ego because perhaps the things are so bad that, maybe in this lifetime you're not able to deal with it. But when you have the courage to face it and get past it, the true self and all your abilities as a human being are started to reveal to yourself once you've done that. And that's why, people that are in greed and stuff, they go to a psychic and they ask for the lottery numbers, right? Because it's all fear and greed, right? What happens is when you go past that, all that stuff doesn't matter, and you access a whole new level of existence. And it takes a lot of courage to get there, but once you start getting confirmation and you have experience of what the benefits are, you're addicted to it, and you keep working on it, and you just keep going and trying to eliminate the layers of the onion. I don't know about you guys, but that's the way I felt about it.
Why do all that inner work? And I'll say what I said at the beginning. What you have to understand is that when these dark aspects start to come and visit, we don't welcome them in. We imagine that we're suddenly being haunted and destroyed. The depressions that people feel, the anxieties, is actually, when you really see it correctly, is the first time they've even negotiated that inner voice, but they've learned to think of that as the enemy, as opposed to the voices of the world. Here we now have it. Scientists may soon be able to erase fear and trauma from your mind. That is the death of humanity. That is 2012. That is post-humanism. That's where we're going. All the other aspects of it are kind of less important than this. As David Hawkins reminds us, there is no antidepressant that will cure a depression that's spiritually based. For the malaise does not originate from brain dysfunction, but from an accurate response to the desecration of life. Sophocles put the entire problem this way. He's a great Greek playwright and deep thinker, and he said that, look, nothing vast enters the life of mortals without a curse. Talking about that suffering again. Somehow, as our tragedy, our pain, our sorrow leads us back to the shrine. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. Therefore, the only thing to do then is to come into a different relationship with that force of tragedy.
The significance of 12 years of emotional body training is that is exactly what they were doing in ancient Egypt. There was a 12-year school, a 12-year Egyptian mystery school, if you will, that focused on emotional body clearing. The training was called the left eye of Horus. The left eye because the left eye is controlled by the right brain. It's the side of the mind or the brain that sees life intuitively. This is what was going on in Egypt. And I had 12 years exactly of emotional body training when the missing information began to, like I say, magically appear to me. So I was recreating unknowingly what was going on in ancient Egypt. There's 12 temples, 12 major temples in Egypt along the Nile. The initiate would spend about a year in each of these temples, learning how to move through fears and limitations associated with each of the 12 major chakras. There's one specific training that the initiate would go through in the left eye of Horus training in the temple known as Kamumbu. The initiate would stand in front. There would be a wall right in front of him, and then there would be 3 steps leading down into water, and it was dark. They couldn't see any further than the 3 steps. So the initiate was told only one thing, that is to go into the water and to find a different way to come out. That's all they were told. It was, again, dark, and it was deep. It was about 25 feet deep. After they carefully went through and came into an opening, they could see that there was a tank now that was lit. When they got into this tank, they also saw that they had company. There were crocodiles in that tank. And remember, the instructions are to find a different way out. Well, looking through the crocodiles, what they could see is that up at the top here, there was a way out. When they came to the top, they were told by the instructor, oh, by the way, you just failed. That was not the way out. So failure meant that they had to go through a lot more training. Then when it was thought, after much more training, that they were ready, they went back into the tank again. Now, this time they knew there were crocodiles. So, you know, in a way, you would think that makes it almost worse. In the moment of their greatest fear, they had to go deeper until they found the correct way out. So, to me, this just perfectly illustrates the whole concept of emotional body clearing. If you can allow yourself to have a thorough experience of something that you would otherwise tend to avoid or to resist, what happens is you move through it. In this specific instant, the fears integrate. So that by the end of 12 years of training, these guys were fearless. I mean, nothing bothered them.
For instance, Gerald Massey reminds us, the Egyptians had no vicarious atonement, no imputed righteousness, no second-hand salvation. No initiate in the Osirian mysteries could possibly have rested his hope on reaching heaven on the Galilean line of glory. His was the more crucial way of Amenta. Amenta meaning the underworld. To tread with the guidance of the word, that step by step and act by act, he must himself make true. So what we're talking about was literally the bedrock of all of the theologies of the ancient world before it got corrupted.
407, your name and where you're calling from?
Hi, this is Judy from Longwood, Florida.
Hey, Judy from Florida. How can I help you today?
I am so excited I called you. I've been listening to your archive shows. I think I listened to 10 of them this last weekend. So thank you very much for taking my call.
You are welcome. Is there anything that's sticking out in the archive shows for you?
Well, your energy is just amazing, number one. And you just speak so articulate to the spirit within me. I mean, I hear what you're saying thoroughly. And I've experienced joy in the last few days, just knowing that that's something I create.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, well, maybe Andrew can help me understand why I've been researching what's happening on the planet within the solar system and the galaxy. I've been like hungry for that knowledge, not to share it, but to.
Are you familiar?
To share it.
Are you familiar?
What am I supposed to do with all this?
I'm going to read your Akashic records. Are you familiar with Isis, the Queen of Isis?
Yes, very.
You were an Egyptian priest of Isis that used sound to
Roberta Herzog, you know who she is.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, you would use sound to access the Akashic records of people that needed healings. And this was about 16,000 years ago, so it wasn't the concept of Egypt itself. It was still the mid to falling range of Atlantis, where beings from other galaxies were trying to defend Earth from a great invasion that was coming. And you were using the sound to enter the Akashic records of refugees on this planet. For a while, about 150 years, there was a time people that were dying from other parts of the galaxies were brought here because the healers were here. And you were one of those healers. And as you began to access the Akashic records to help heal these people, because that's what you did, you began to notice a common, almost imperceptible theme that Earth was doomed, and you didn't want it to be doomed. And I'm being rushed by this energy because you knew right then and there, you saw the future. You connected to an Akashic record of a person that was a future traveler from the future to the 16,000 years in the past, and you opened the Akashic records of a person in the future, and you got to experience everything that went on for the next 18,000 years. And it was a massive download for you at that time. And as you finished that lifetime, you were on your deathbed telling everybody they wouldn't believe you. And now you're in this future lifetime doing the same thing. Okay? The world isn't ready, but you've already accessed your Akashic records to the point where you know this is true. You hear my voice because I went through something very similar to you, except I did it on other planets on a much bigger scale. And as you open your Akashic records, you're going to realize you're very similar to me, except you came here to be the sacred feminine Akashic reader. Men are a little different for you in this lifetime. You're here to heal women. And there will be men that come to you that want to be women this lifetime. And you specifically will access the Akashic records of other planets through other mediums like me or Brenda or any of the others, so that a male spirit that wants to be a female spirit after the change can do that in a method and in a manner that does not hurt their spirit or their spiritual contracts. You're going to be reconnecting the sacred feminine to those people that needed to be feminine this lifetime.
Yes.
Goodness. Go ahead.
Oh, my goodness. Yes.
Okay. So what we have living inside our world, controlling us, are the universal apex predators, living on the most spiritually fortified planet in all 17 universes. This doesn't end easy. That's why it took so long to get here. You didn't have one. You had the top 15 apex predators of the universe who decided to work together to force light and dark to fight each other at the most highest zealot level, while light and dark didn't even know it was being used by these apex predators.
Didn't even know. That's
Didn't
incredible.
even know. And it took them millions of years to figure it out. And once they did, it came down to who was the most capable of projecting to the ancient future at a point where it wasn't even malleable in the ancient past. And those that figured out how to create the ancient future and reverse engineer it till we can get to now. At the same time, while the multidimensional beings were engineering a whole new universal future that didn't include that ancient future of unity. Because they were controlling at our belief systems at all dimensions and time streams of us living here. And then we'll learn even more that these multidimensional beings aren't just on this world, they're on hundreds of worlds. And there are other worlds still going through their own process of domination and control. But when these 15 apex predators are removed from the universal game, those numbers 16 through 100, they're not going to be apex predators anymore. They won't even be in this universe anymore. They will have a whole new universe for them to go and be apex predators amongst each other.
So all the apex predators will kind of get put in their own little
Universe.
Little.
An 18th universe will be created for them.
Oh.
So they no longer entangle with us.
When's
and create
this?
creational events.
Is that when is this happening?
2011 to 2014 is when all of the contract holders at that moment in history are the contract holders for all universal karma. And universal karma is coming to a zero balance. Whoever is the contract holder, which are these 15 multidimensional beings who are the upper echelon and crust of our world, they will be holding the hot potato of karma. And it's not judgment that will come, it is remedy and resolve that will come as we no longer agree to time, because the compression field in the astral world is limiting the Archon's ability to force reincarnate people and to use their false light technology. There has been a tremendous blockade on the astral worlds to prevent beings from immigrating to our astral worlds and creating ancient futures with us before they've lived on this world. You know, we're going to learn that this quarantine field affects whole layers we haven't even begun to perceive yet. And that's what allows now the time of nothing happening, so nothing happens, and then those left holding the bag during nothing happening are the ones that karma is going to come calling to for the final balancing of the books. Those will be the truth tellers, the disclosers.
Some people in the chat were bringing up, and I think so too. Have you ever watched Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Love
Some
the
people
show.
are saying it's like Q. They're bringing up Q, the guy that pops in, and for those who haven't watched it, like he's like this all powerful being, and he just kind of pops up to mess around with the crew and the captain, and he's all powerful, can do anything he wants, but he's basically just a giant dick.
And there's not one. Yeah, he's a giant dick, but there's not one Q. There are other Qs, and they meet in a restaurant at the end of the universe. Believe it or not, these multidimensional beings have a restaurant at the end of the universe. That's where they planned all this shit out. I'm serious. They planned all this out a long time ago. When war was introduced to this universe, they sat back and go, we're the apex predators. And they just introduced war. You know, are they challenging us to do something? No, we're going to go hang out at the end of the universe and use remote viewing skills to figure out what this new war thing is and how much fun we really can have. And then they realized it's a game that the universal creators, and like, no, we're not playing your game. We're creating our own game. And we're going to use your war game to invest into your other people like you wanted to. But we're going to make zealots that are so crazy that they're going to make uncreational events by whispers from us. That's what they challenged the universe and did. You're not giving me a little play toy called war. Screw that. I want you, Mr. Universe. I want to be you. Then that makes me the true apex predator. I've killed a universe.
Oh, that is cool. You know, a question that popped up from that too, though, and I just have to ask because you mentioned the restaurant at the end of the universe. So who owns that restaurant?
McDonald's.
Who's running it?
It's a drive-through.
Julie is laughing at this too. She and I had the same question pop up in our mind. That was good.
That or a Denny's. That or a Denny's.
Yeah, there you go. Open up all times a day.
All times in the universe. Open universally.
If we are divided within, right, where you actually now are feeling that one part of you, you're disassociated from it, it's not part of you, it's not integrated into consciousness, then we have to find the internal adversary. And we know that it is. And it doesn't matter whether you buy into Freud's 3-part schemata, you know, or Jung's 4-part schemata. It's simple. We know that there's a conscious and unconscious self. Many divisions. We have the persona. We even call people persons. Right? Here's a person. The word just means a facade. You know? Even the very word refers to just a facade. And as I said, if you have disharmony within these modes of being, right, within the anatomy of your own psyche, some people have more, some people have less. If you have these kinds of divisions and this kind of disharmony, you're not only a weaker individual, you are now dependent on all the gimmickry that's going to come in and tell you how to gain it. So instantly you've lost your center. And then one thing leads to yet another and another and another as you try to get out of the mix, out of the problem. As we said, the door to truth is narrower than you think. We are entrapped in a maze, in a web. And the strange thing about that web is that the more that you try to escape from it, the tighter it becomes. We're strangling ourselves often by our very attempts to be free. Who do you think loves that? Who do you think earns dividends because of our efforts, even spiritually, to liberate ourselves? Who earns points from that? Who is established from that? Do you see what I'm trying to say? That the bottom of the pyramid supports the top.
There's something not right here. I feel cold.
That place is strong, but the dark side of the Force, a domain of evil it is. And you must go.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you. Your weapons. You will not need them.
Yeah, we talked about this the other day, but I can repeat it. And I'll use the words of Michael Desarian. He uses Carl Gustav Jung. And the shadow is the ego protects the shadow. And the ego provides resistance from the external sort of provocation to face the traumas that have occurred to us and the traumas we have done to others so we can survive. And it takes a lot of courage to seek to break that down. And I can describe it even in another visual way. And I'm sure everyone's familiar with Empire Strikes Back. And there's that part in it where Luke goes to the planet where Yoda is, and he starts to go through all that Jedi training. And there's very good reason why they don't train the Jedi so late in life, because it's all about spiritual sort of psychic awakening, basically. But there's that point where Luke is sort of on his own and exploring, and there's that bit where he gets that calling. And he decides to follow his instincts and go down that sort of cave. And what he comes across is Darth Vader. And he actually battles Darth Vader on that planet. And it's like, what the hell's going on here? But Luke defeats Darth Vader. And what happens is the head blows off and then the mask explodes and he sees his own face there. And what that is a symbolic representation of defeating his own shadow. So he's in the heart rather than in fear, and using that power that he has for misguided means rather than for the betterment of, the rebellion and stuff. So that's probably a good way of sort of visualizing it, because most people have seen that movie.
That's a good association.
Sort of on a tangent to this, but somewhat related. One thing that I was just sort of curious about is, these shows like Star Trek or even Star Wars or any of these shows that seem to have bits of truth that are almost woven into it, like Q, like this kind of being. Are people like the writers who are creating this? Are they tapping in?
It's soft disclosure.
Soft disclosure.
Yes, that is how Hollywood has tried to say, hey guys, we know we're really fucking you, but at least here's a little painkiller. Okay?
Wow.
You figure it out.
A pillow to bite down on?
Yep, pretty much a pillow to bite down on. I love that. Thank you, Danielle. I'm going to read that.
No, it's just a great it's just a great thing to think about too, because there's so many times, I know a lot of people have experienced this too, but there's these times when you watch these movies and you just feel like, yeah, or
2001: A Space Odyssey, classic soft disclosure.
Yeah, wow.
It made it through the highest level of Hollywood, and the controllers didn't realize the truth that they were subtly telling in there. Because it still had the bad guy influence character in it. Okay? What are some other soft disclosure stuff? Minority Report. Think of that. You ever watch the movie Minority Report? They use psychics to detect crime ahead of time, and they arrest you before you did your crime. Star Wars.
What's it?
Huge,
Star Wars.
Star Wars, a huge soft disclosure. A galactic world out there that has got a bunch of people working together. And then you wonder, what truth is this to this republic and stuff? It was a way to indicate to a society that had never seen science fiction in that manner, so that beings, off-world beings, even had potential to exist unto our reality, because religion and science had taken our ability away to even perceive their existence.
That's incredible. And that's so interesting too, because you see like the world like that too, and and you have the emperor/senator who's deceiving everyone and playing everyone from both sides, and those kinds of parallels as well, I'm guessing, like through the and then what about people who feel a lot of affinity with things like Jedi and the Force? Like, is that kind of a callback to our personal power, tapping into our own power?
That's our ancient Lemurian and ancient Atlantean days, in which we would be fifth and sixth dimensional expression beings manifest in a DNA skin suit that was similar to this, but we had shape-changing abilities. We could be whatever shape for whatever density of reality we needed, and we would go there, and if we were in a Jedi expression, in that metaphor, we were going there to do very positive, to instill sovereignty into other places, to stop other apex predators from preying on fresh worlds that were just awakening to their universal awareness. Because as free will came into the universe, universal beings and galactic beings and different beings suddenly said, I can do whatever, and there are no more rules that were in the non-free will. I can do anything until something comes and stops me. And finally, a bunch of free will worlds came together and formed an alliance. And this alliance had different machinations in different places. For a while, it existed in this part of the universe, and then went completely to freed this part of the universe, went to this part, and migrated here and there. Wherever domination control was popping up, there were these organizations of education, of sovereignty, so worlds could fortify their own world to prevent their reality from easily being outbreeded. I know. That's a big one.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Schools and centers for learning were closed, and works of art and imagination were especially frowned upon. Hundreds of beautiful temples were leveled to the ground, and monks were assigned to defile the ground with their excrement and prevent anyone from rebuilding. Okay, this is how fanatical it can become. So we're doing good, okay. The world has already seen worse. Helen Ellerby, in The Dark Side of Christian History, she says something incredible. Gregory the Great, talking again about the same Gregory, condemned education for all but the clergy as folly and wickedness. So, they don't mind if it's for a few of their insiders. He forbade laymen to read the Bible. He had the library of the Palatine Apollo burned. And he said, lest its secular literature distract the faithful from contemplation on heaven. So we can't have books. We can't have learning, but we can have faith, and we can have belief, and we can have blind obedience.
Sure.
She goes on to say that after Christians had spent years destroying books and libraries, St. John Chrysostom, the preeminent Greek father of the church, proudly declared, and this is a quote, every trace of the old philosophy and literature of the ancient world has vanished from the face of the earth. You know that I work a lot on writing about the Druids and the loss of the Druidic colleges, and people just cross their arms and go, what Druidic colleges? Okay, let me quote this again then, just in case you didn't get it. Every trace of the old philosophy and literature of the ancient world has vanished from the face of the earth. That is what I mean. They're proud of it.
Amazing.
They did it. They unleashed the hordes.
Yeah.
Christians tore Hypatia to pieces. A woman who said, "Think for yourself." The Alexandrian prophetess. It was a Christian group that burned the Romans first and the Christians.
What's what Vern says? It's just feeding on its own pathology. It's just perpetrating the pathology.
And yes, and deep down inside, people know something's wrong. They have an essence. They suspect certain things, but having no other reference point, they're not willing to make that little leap. They shouldn't be afraid to make that leap. They are the path. They have more in common than they suspect. Consciousness is the name of the game, not politics.
Well, then what's stopping people? A lot of people aren't getting stopped, and the paradigm shift is,
because they have fear. They're basically culturally conditioned, and
well, by the name of your book, you would assume that you believe that we have a little help in maintaining fear. We're having a little encouragement from outside.
Yes, from part of the negative structure, yes.
Perpetrating itself just in its own dynamics?
Yes, I mean, they're trying to cause as many unaligned people to align themselves in that direction, to supply more energy to that resonance, as it were. But that resonance is self-defeating.
Is it a conscious situation on their part, or is it just part of the dynamics of that mindset?
It's a perfectly conscious situation on their part. And, you really have to understand what the positive-negative hierarchy thing is all about. And a good friend of mine, Michael Topper, wrote some very good material on it, and that's in Matrix 3, too. And you really need to understand what that's about, what the idea of positive and negative conceptually is about, while you're viewing everything dualistically, in order to really understand what unity means.
It's the resistance, if you take what I said last time. By resisting going into the unconscious, remember Jung's quote about the shadow? And I said that another translation was that by not doing the shadow work, it's really basically that you're, like he said, doing anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid dealing with your soul. That's what this is all about. That resistance is not just a reflex to stop you going into the unconscious. It's the reflex that prevents you from growing and making your own soul, if you take my theory that that's what we're here to do. It's so important that this resistance and what it's about. Because if you're thinking you came in with a soul and the soul is there, then of course this is meaningless. This is absolutely meaningless. But the moment that you realize that your life and your experience is here to develop the thing called your soul that you don't have when you come in. You have nature's spark of life, that's animate, that's different. But the soul, your individual purpose, your dharma, you don't have, and you're meant to build that here. And that's what this is really talking about. That we resist doing that. Then we have to look into that, why that would be.
It's very important. Most people, they want to go and activate portal and create vortexes, and I'm like, no. It is not for everyone. It takes great responsibility, and I want to add warning to those of you who think that you could just go and open portals. You have to understand that one must clean your closet out completely, including your ancestor, karmic ancestor, because it comes in a package. You're a package deal. If you are connected with a lot of dark energies, okay, demons, Satan, name it, when you play with energy, particularly opening portals, you will open that portals automatically.
Based off of your ancestral wisdom and DNA. I
That's
talk
right.
a lot about ancestors, and where Nikki and I come into absolute union is how those ancestor spirits influence you each and every lifetime, as well as pass on the contracts of other ancestors so that you have an opportunity to resolve the soul family karma.
Oh, was I not? It took over a lot of contracts in this lifetime. And you know what's funny? You have your future, okay, written ahead of you, okay, all these successful things. But until then, you fulfill those contracts. They will bug you. It's like, how when you're a little child and you want your parents to do something for you and you keep tugging on their shirt, mommy, and you're distracting your parents. That's what they do.
Yep.
Okay? It's like by the time like you try to grab something of success, okay, something will happen. It's like taken away from you. And you wonder, what just happened? What just happened to you? And that's what happened. It means that they're allowed to tug on your shirt because you have a contract to fulfill. Okay? Until then, if there is no contract, then they're not allowed to do that.
Right.
Okay?
And a little another twist there is you have free will to change contracts, but many, many, many contracts have this fine print that's been inserted by the hijacked incarnation grid. We'll talk about that a little later, but I want to get into ancestor spirits, and then we'll move in how the ancestor spirits grew families into bigger soul families until we have the billions of people here. Because this is one of the keys to understanding how your ancestors from another DNA lineage, from another lifetime, can interact and co-create with you in a current DNA lineage that's a total separate soul family. There's so many layers to soul family and soul contracts. A contract from Lemuria can suddenly become active now, hundreds of thousands of years later, simply because the synchronicity of soul families coming together has triggered old contracts.
That's
and
right.
This is when you worry about opening portals and you're not prepared for that, because if you haven't looked at your ancestor spirits on both mother's and father's side, at least 3 generations back, you run the risk of finding yourself opening up concepts you're not ready because you just haven't healed yourself enough. We are in a society and a culture that doesn't allow inner healing. And both Nikki and I promote inner healing at every angle before you go to the super experiences.
Exactly.
So
very well said, Andrew. I do promote inner healing first and foremost. You do not point fingers and blame other people for all the mishappenings into your life. It is within you. You're always responsible for everything. It's hard to grasp at time and swallow that. But when one can see things at multiple aspects, things in a play, okay, and like you said, it is multiple level, and I think even for a certain level of psychic, okay, it's very hard to see that.
785, are you there?
Yes.
What was your name again?
My name is Jackie.
Hey, Jackie. So, how long have you been listening to the show for?
I listened, a friend of mine sent me, there were several readings, and so I listened to 4 days of the show.
So you just listened? You decided to call in today?
Yes. She had done a reading, and then a couple friends of hers had done a reading, and I thought I was very impressed with it, and thought I would do it myself.
Okay. Well, the way this works, you got to tell me about the first 10 minutes of your morning. Be as descriptive as possible from the point that you rubbed your eyes and you realized you were awake. So describe that out loud. Give me about 40 seconds of that, and I'm going to tune into your energies.
Okay. I've been waking up really early and then trying to go back to sleep. My alarm went off, and then the typical punch the snooze several times. I got up and turned on the computer, and let's see, I've tuned
into your energies.
Do what?
Right. I've tuned into your energies already.
Okay.
I'm going to read your 4 directions. From your east direction, what is coming to you is the rhythm and timing and the pulse of life. There's also coming a time of quickening and sharing, because you're beginning to understand that there's a unity and wholeness that's been building in the soul that you've been nurturing. This energy of the east has been the pulse and heartbeat of your world for quite some time. And as this unity and heartbeat, peace heartbeat gets deeper into, is where you're beginning to explore the rhythm of the times, the rhymes of the times. And this is where you've been picking apart each year, trying to understand the actual moments of sharing and quickening and exchange among all those races that are wishing to be free. As I look deeper into your east direction, I come right to the counting hoop, the purification of the whole, the advance, and the understanding. These are the energies that you are sending back out. The whole concept. And the first is the recent victories you've had over some male figures in your life. Are you connecting to this right now?
Yes.
All right, these victory over the male figures, this has been one of the greatest moments of your feminine times.
Yes.
Okay? And afterwards, there's going to be a requirement for your purification. And that's something you know has been building in you. And if when you decide to do this ritually as like the letting go process of what's going on in your life, you'll advance into the great mystery of life where you'll get your new sets of missions. And you've been completing mission after mission after mission, and your spirit guides are clearly here and clearly asking for an understanding for you that you've completed the old mission and the new mission is waiting for you to accept it. You understand what's going on?
Yes, and I think I guess I'm kind of frustrated that my missions are always so difficult, and that they are so they drain me so emotionally, and I guess I just don't understand why I don't have a simpler life.
That's because you haven't finished the purification process. You're right at the edge of how do I put this? It's a difficult term to describe. Just give me a second here. Think of something that's encased in ice, and the very last bit of the ice is being removed, and then you'll have to get the core of what's going on. You've been melting your callousness, which created this initial thought concept, and this is what you're going to purify. That moment where you allowed that into your sacred space and closed a boundary that tightened on you.
Okay.
How many times were you too trusting of men and they ultimately turned it a different way that you don't expect?
I don't even know if I can count the number of times.
Well, that's the root of what you're going to be getting at. It's not about the individual men, it's about the original choice of you doing that, and that's what you're going to purify. That's what you're spiritually contract releasing. And that will free up probably a tremendous river of energy for you. Because every man that's attached to that contract you're disintegrating is quite literally free of that contract too, and you create healing threefold.
So am I just healing me, or am I healing them at the same time?
Simultaneously. By honoring the contract and by ending it and no longer empowering anything that has to do with the negative concepts of the contract. Example, you'll have to determine early on in your dating where you went through the change where you became a little bit callous to your sixth sense giving you a little warning.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And more of these were, to the root of my initial family.
Mm-hmm.
Were linked to my initial family. So my father and my brothers.
Right.
So a lot of that was around them. And then there, of course, there were also some other relationships. I know that it's in some of the females, the male aggressive part of females that I've been dealing with too.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, because that's the reawakening of the sacred feminine in you. The purification process you're going through is you are eliminating the male energy for a short period in your lifetime, so that you can return to the sacred feminine balance that's going between masculine and feminine. Think of it as a pendulum that's going, side to side to side to side, and you're flipping all the way to the other side to the sacred feminine for a short period of time. And then what that's going to do is the male side of you, which is going to be completely out of phase to you and going to be teaching you lessons, this is where you eliminate the energies of the male side so it returns to its natural state, while the sacred feminine rebirths in you, quite literally.
Okay, so how do I expedite the healing?
Expedite the healing? It's going to require a couple days off. Honestly, I'm really sensing you're overtaxed, that you're not giving yourself the fullness amount of choices that you could have now.
Mm-hmm. So, the thing is that I would say that I'm an introvert, and I regroup by just relaxing.
Okay. Do you ever go to rituals or ceremonies?
No. I grew up with organized religion and just, I don't know, it's just, I guess that, how do I say this nicely? It's just not in tune spiritually to what I believe is right. And I mean, and the thing is that I've done like a 180 on my opinion of the world. I went, from being brought up very traditional to now I'm very, I don't know, I'm very world knowledgeable. I don't listen to mainstream media. I feel like I'm in touch with what's going on in the world, and I'm also having a lot of problems with not letting what's going on in the world directly impact me. Just that my eyes have been opened, and it bothers me that I see the evil that's involved in it. I mean, I see the good too, but I guess I'm fearful of what's going to be going on this year in our country and in our world.
Okay. The fear thing is something many people that are in the awakening process are going to directly connecting to you. And they're clearly telling me that you got to stop on the fear and understand your other mission is over and you have to accept the new mission. And the new mission is going to be your hardest thing because it's about your original soul contract being here with Earth. A really long time ago, you were a refugee soul from the Andromedan galaxy, and you came here during a time where the Andromedan galaxy was in severe peril, and they needed to get the best of the best out of the solar system as a precautionary because the times had gotten so dark. At that point in time, Earth was what's called a sacred refugee planet. It had built up crystal defense and fortresses so no one could invade here. And they began taking healing refugees from the various places that were under attack by the dark forces. And you were one of those refugees from Andromeda. At the same time, you met a soul family from the Pleiadians, from all over, and you created a brand new soul family that agreed for healing on Earth time during their time of need of their world. They would, they would return to Earth at this time with all of their power. And that's what you're going through right now. It's an understanding that this soul contract you have for being here right now is real old. And you're going to have to take that into your heart and really own it because that's what you're coming into now.
So will I know what my new soul contract is, and will it be different than what it has been in the past?
Until you go through the sacred feminine process and allow it to awaken in your womb, allow the 7 future generations of children to come and nest into your womb, and not in a literal form, but in a spiritual form, so they can live through your soul contracts for a few hours. So when they again understand how to write their soul contracts to be the bridge souls until they choose a mother and father. So that's what awakening the sacred feminine is understanding that there's a network of young people waiting to come in this world, and all women are that linked network, so a child can come in and live through the placenta of the void in your womb and experience your life force in that sacred space protected by the spiritual contracts. So quite literally, that's awakening there. You have to bring that concept into you as you're letting go of the male side, and once again, you'll reunite to your genetic roots. At that point, you'll understand the purification process that you need is clearing out the male aspect of you. And that actual will be the spiritual awakening as you awaken to the feminine once again. When I say this contract, it's really old. Like, I do a galactic historian on my Tuesday night shows here, and I've encountered people that are old, and you're on my top 20 list now. That's how old you are.
I don't know to take that as a compliment or whatever, but I guess it is what it is. So have I had? So I guess the thing is that when people talk about previous lives, have I had many previous lives then, or no?
Oh yeah. You have 4 main soul planets that you incarnate on: Earth, Andromeda, Lyria, and Jinakush, which is an offshoot of all 3, where all the refugee species got together and formed their own world. So you coexist and live different lives in all of them, but you have been setting up the major lives here on Earth, so you are part of the times of change. You would come in for 3 generations during a time of change and then leave and then return and then leave. So you were always a powerful soul that would come in cyclically looking for family dynamics and DNA that your spirit could bind to, because you understood the family's DNA because you've lived within it before. In you and thousands of others that were in that soul group kept coming here but many stopped coming and stopped honoring their first contract with Earth. And you're one of those that's honoring this final contract here now.
Oh, so this is my final contract with Earth?
Mm-hmm. And then you
I
get
think
to
that's a
determine
good
what
thing
you want to do after.
because when I first came up with the whole, you know, that their lives before this and contracts and stuff like that, and that I remember where I heard it, and I said, when they said, yeah, you know, usually you decided and chose long before you came here why that you would be willing to come here. And that was before I'd ever heard you or the word contract. And I said, well, I think I need to renegotiate my contract. So the thing is that because I find all I feel very tired all the time. And I've been in the process of healing thyroid and thyroid issues. So and some of the, what do you want to call it, some of the symptoms that go with my thyroid disease are depression. So I have struggled with depression my whole life. And so is that linked with what I'm going through?
It's actually linked to the passing of the seasons and the movement of the stars.
Repeat that. What did you say?
It's linked to the passing of the seasons and the movement of the stars.
Okay.
You have to understand the way your soul contracts are, and I do this in earnest just because sometimes it's hard to explain on the first communication of how your contracts are working. When you're this old, it means you're playing on the big boy field and you're not playing on the little girl field. Okay, quite literally. So you have soul contracts that are hanging around that are many millions of years old. And there are other beings that have been here millions of years too, and all of a sudden can walk by you in a mall and understand that you have a dangling contract that they can add fine print to. So quite literally, the string of men you meet is that karma coming through. But you as the soul planning for it to come through now because you're that old, because you don't play in the little girl field anymore. You play in the big boy field because you're that old. When you're that old, you make spiritual contracts that can literally unlock your talents in a day. And then lock those talents back up until you solve a set of personal issues. And then once again, you're open back up to those energies because the higher self is leading you into a theme of spirit contracts, and it'll be your free will choice to accept every aspect of that. And that's where you'll create spirit guides on a whole new level when you decide to manifest them for that purpose.
Wow. So the thing is, it sounds to me like I'm getting ready to go to another level.
You know, you're graduating, and when you're done here, you get to finish all the other karma you got locked into here, because there's other karma to release off this world. I mean, you have a whole new set of choices, but what you'll take with you is the family DNA lineage that you've been birthing into here. So when this time of change happens, you'll go through your own psychic changes as your familial DNA from the off-planet begins to take effect, and your light body and your physical body begin to meld on the DNA level, because DNA is light in another waveform, and we're light bodies at that. And your light body is what I simply think of: a boat that's got a single hull and a boat that's got two hulls. It's called a catamaran. And then you have things called a trimaran. That's 3 hulls. Your soul has 3 hulls to it. And what that really means is it can take a beating really severely and keep on going. It means you are part of the fortress creations here on Earth, the original psychic fortresses that were created to prevent the spiritual invasion, which held it off for many millions of years until finally evolution took over and they were able to get back here. So your concept is vital here, because the fortress that is Earth needs to be disassembled for Earth to be free. And as your final layer of wisdom, you'll be helping people break down the psychic fortresses on an individual level, and that includes your own psychic fortress you've created around yourself.
So the thing is that you said that so hopefully this is close to being done. So does this mean that I'm getting towards the end of my physical life here on Earth?
No. We're not in the fire of creation yet. Would you see people out marching in the street in the same scale and size as the 1960s? We're in the fires of creation. We're not in the fires of creation right now. And they can extend this out as long as they want, because they're in control of the incarnation grid, We haven't reclaimed our power and knowledge of spirit contracts. We haven't begun annulling contracts on a mass scale. And that's something, as big people begin to spread the knowledge and understanding, you can nullify the contracts at will when you understand the terminology is simply going in yourself and identifying where they began.
Okay, so the bottom line, because I'm kind of a bottom line type of person, is that I need to do this healing and finish these contracts and then accept my new contract and let these other people come into me, the other spirits come into me, be open for them to phenomenally come into me.
Well, what they want you to clear, the contracts you have are already done. You're still working as them if they're not done. So quite literally, it's a reset.
I just need to accept them. I need to just accept them.
Yeah. And you're doing a reset. You're getting a clean slate. And by doing this purification process, is you recalling the energy that you invested in the old contract so you're ready to meet all the new contracts to begin the path.
Mm-hmm. So does this mean that I'm making I'm trying to make a career change too? So is this all interconnected then?
Yes, it's always all interconnected. It's just a matter of how it functions that way.
And the thing is that so are there any other tips on how to get through this final stages besides the psychological? I mean, there's
just a second. Menti, if you mute your mic for just a minute, I have another caller here on the line.
Sure.
Okay. The final thing is, honestly, you just have to get up and do it. You have to make ceremonial time and honor that time as with all of your energy, because it's a time where you're turning the reset switch on and you're ending the old and beginning the new, and you need to be prepared for it. So it's a time of preparation and understanding and heart love for yourself.
So I need to find some way to spiritually honor this.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. In your own form and method. It need not be in any church, but you need to make it ritual for yourself, ceremonial for yourself, with all the honor behind it.
Wonderful. Well, at least I feel very unique that this is something. I feel like this is something that I've had for a long time. I do feel that I've been carrying something for a long, long time. So when you said millions of years, I agree. I really do believe that I've been carrying it for millions of years.
But in the new energy, it seems like there will be a large group of people that will seek healing.
Correct.
Just as they're hungry
and
people.
Many of them will get it just through pilgrimages, like here to Mount Shasta.
Okay.
The places of power will begin doing their jobs once again at the highest levels.
Now, listen, the Quero make it very clear that we have to behave as though none of this is based in any kind of reality. We shouldn't have an attachment to this happening. We've got to focus on bringing about the changes that we want to see in the physical empirical material realm. And if we do that and we visualize, then the rest will unfold naturally.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess just kind of wonder real quick, what do you always say the event coming up and what's coming up, and you're talking about the spiritual war and the war for everything. Is like, what do you mean when you say the events that are coming up? Just like the end? Is it the end game of like a war or something?
What it is we as a species for the last 26,000 years have been a separated dreamtime society. You've heard of the term unified field theory, that all energies are one. Our dream energies are separated. Our physical bodies and our dream bodies can't interact in the same way that they did 26,000 years ago. Also, we as a species have been separated by technology. There's a technology on this planet that's keeping one side of the world that's facing the dark side and one side facing the light, separate dreamtime societies. So what's going to happen is literally the two sides of the world are going to overcome the technology of separation, and they're going to begin to dream as a unified dreamtime society. That's where people begin to encounter things in their dreams, and then they'll start sharing their dreams, and one person will say, wow, I had this dream, and another person will say, I had the same thing. Somebody will post a video to YouTube describing their dream of pole shift or something else, and 1,000 people will respond to it. Another thing that'll happen, a nurse will go into a hospital room thinking that the patient in there's got 2 broken legs from a car accident the night before, and they'll come in that the patient, has no broken legs. He's healed himself in a dream. People that have been discarded from society will suddenly have spirit walk-ins in their dream time, and they'll become healers. Things like that are going to bring us together, and the forces of domination and control aren't going to be able to keep that out of the news when you're telling the neighbor next door to you over and over and over again around the world. That's really how it's going to play itself out. And to kind of help, until you see people in the street in the same scale and size as the 1960s protesting the issues of our world, you're still going to be under the force of domination and control. But no, this is the final 16 seconds of the football game. Both sides still have timeouts, and right now they're reviewing a play.
So does there have to be a massive collapse, like all the systems collapse along with a global event? We manifest everything now. When I said we're in a timeout right now and they're reviewing a play, another powerful spirit made a play when Obama went to Israel. Comes back into the concept of world news, and what that of beings that are jumping forward at this time are suddenly finding themselves deleted from the energetic matrix and being replaced by other ascended masters, either in forms of children new to the world or walk-ins to spirits that are giving up living here now. Oh, okay. Well, that's encouraging.
So every time they act, something is taken away from them. So you just got to understand, it's like a child in temper tantrum. That's what they're doing now. You're taking the toys away, and it's going to be a point where the adults in the world are going to stand up and say no, and then people to protest, and as they protest, the government itself will simply walk out on the government because nobody in the government wants to be the target of the anger of the people. They'll start turning state's evidence, and we'll start arresting people and doing the right thing. We already know what's wrong with our world. It's just a matter of us getting the guts and getting out there and marching.
Right.